Good evening, everybody. I'm just going to wait a couple of minutes for any last-minute attendees to join. But just before we start, if somebody could just put in the chat box whether or not you can hear me. Once we know that's okay, then we'll start with the presentation. So if somebody wouldn't mind just popping yes into the Q&A box on the right-hand side, if you can hear me, that would be great. Not seeing any notifications, so I'm taking it that you can't hear me at the moment. Just need at least one person, if possible, to say they can hear us. I don't want to run through a presentation if nobody's able to hear what we're saying. So if someone could just comment in the chat box, that would be brilliant, and then we can get the presentation underway.
Or if it's not possible for anyone to, if you for some reason you can't hear Gemma, perhaps if someone can hear me.
Okay, if there are issues that are preventing us from being heard, which it seems may be the case as nobody's commented, then we may need to reschedule this webinar. So unless somebody can please comment and confirm, we may need to look at rescheduling this, as it appears that we can't be heard. So like I say, just a quick yes in the chat box if anybody can hear us, and then we can get on with the presentation. But as it seems like nobody can hear us. Oh, fantastic. Thank you. We've had somebody comment. So thank you very much for that person. OK, so hi, we've had another one. Brilliant. Thank you very much, guys. So just to get started, my name is Gemma Callow. I am the Communications Manager for the Brumbreeze programme, leading on stakeholder engagement. I'm joined this evening by my colleague, Gareth Wood, who is a Senior Clean Air Zone Officer. What we're going to do tonight is just talk you through how the Clean Air Zone will operate and some of the support that's available. I'm seeing people in the chat saying there's may have been some corruption with the video. Just to let you know, this is being recorded and we will circulate a copy of it afterwards. So if there are any issues, hopefully you will be able to catch up on them. So I will start now with the presentation. Gareth will keep an eye on the chat box, so if you are having any problems, please just pop them in there. Okay, so the Clean Air Zone, let's start now. Okay, so hopefully you can see that. So Birmingham is introducing a Clean Air Zone to tackle poor air quality. Air pollution has been declared a national health emergency. It contributes to conditions such as heart disease, cancer, obesity, and in Birmingham it contributes to 900 premature deaths every year through some of those conditions. I won't run through all the stats on screen. Children and the elderly are more adversely affected. And in children, because they are closer to the ground and closer to those exhaust fumes, they do inhale 3 times more air pollution than adults, which does affect their growth and development. So in Birmingham, prior to COVID, we undertook some research of how people do move around and travel within Birmingham city centre, and we found that 50% of all journeys into the city centre were undertaken by car. Of those journeys, 250,000 of them every day were being driven for less than 1 mile. So we're talking about a 20-minute walk. So what the Clean Air Zone is intending to do is rid the roads of those most high polluting vehicles that contribute to the air pollution in the worst way, but also get people to consider travelling alternative ways through walking, cycling, public transport, particularly for those journeys that are less than 1 mile. So Birmingham's Clean Air Zone will go live on the 1st of June this year, having previously been delayed from January last year and summer last year. So the 1st of June this year, we will be the second Clean Air Zone to go live outside of London. Bath will go first on the 15th of March. It's important to note that the Clean Air Zone is mandated by government, and cities across the UK will be implementing them in due course. Each city has a choice of what zone to implement. In Birmingham, we have chosen a category D, which means we will be charging all non-compliant vehicles, including private cars. Bath are doing a category C and won't be charging cars, but we will be. It's also really important to stress that a Clean Air Zone is not the same as a congestion charge. So a congestion charge will charge every vehicle that enters within a certain area. The Clean Air Zone will only charge the most high polluting, and we expect that to be about 1 in 4 vehicles that will be subject to the charge. So the Clean Air Zone you can see on screen, it's the blue area, it's everywhere within the A4540 Middleway, but not the Middleway itself. So there are cameras that are being installed in the zone that will, ANPR cameras that will pick up vehicles as they enter and drive around it. And if it's a non-compliant vehicle, then that's when the charges will be implemented. So you can drive around the Middleway, no problem. As soon as you enter in a non-compliant vehicle, you will be subject to the charge. If you are driving a compliant vehicle, you do not need to take any action. You will not be subject to any charges. So the charges are £8 a day for cars, taxis and vans, and £50 a day for HGVs, coaches and buses. It's important to stress a day is midnight to midnight, not 24 hours from when you enter the zone. But during that midnight to midnight time frame, you can enter and leave the zone as many times as you want for a single charge. However, if you drive in at 10 PM, leave at 2 AM and cross that midnight threshold, you will then be subject to 2 charges. So the payment system will be managed by the government, and that will be available online or over the phone. That will be launched shortly. It's important to stress that you must pay 6 days prior to the day you go in, the day you go in, or 6 days after. So you've got a 13-day payment window. If you don't, you will be subject to a fixed penalty notice of £120. Like London, the onus will be on the driver to know that you've entered and on the driver to take responsibility for making payment. You won't receive a text or a letter to notify you that you owe a fee. You are expected to make that payment yourself. We are installing over 300 signs on the approach and on the border of the Clean Air Zone to warn people that they are approaching and that charges apply. But like I say, it's important to note that you are entering and that you do make the payment within that 13-day window to avoid a fixed penalty notice. So the big question is, will I be charged? The best thing to do and the simplest way to answer this is to go onto the Brumbreeze website, click on the link to the government vehicle checker and enter your registration number, and that will tell you whether or not you'll be subject to the Clean Air Zone charges. On screen, it does state the standards, so the emission standards that we're looking for. So if you drive a Euro 4 petrol car or van or lorry, a Euro 6 diesel, a gas Euro 6, fully electric, fully hydrogen fuel cell, or a hybrid electric that meets those Euro 4, Euro 6 standards, you will not be charged, and therefore you can continue to drive without having to make payment. You can find this information in your V5C logbook, but a Euro 4 petrol vehicle are most vehicles that were manufactured from 2006 onwards. That is a guidance. It's important to stress it is the Euro standard, not the year of manufacture. But just to give you some guidance, most petrol vehicles from 2006 onwards will be compliant, and most diesel vehicles from September 2015 onwards will be compliant. But like I say, the best thing to do is go on the Brumbreeze website, check if you'll be charged, and then you will get a definitive answer. So the Clean Air Zone, despite some media reports, this is not intended to be a money-making scheme for the council. If we make no money from the Clean Air Zone, then we've achieved our objective, because it means there are no high polluting vehicles driving through the zone, and therefore air quality will have improved. That is our objective, is to improve air quality in the city centre. However, we do know that we will make some money from this, particularly in the early days, but that money has to be reinvested in transport related projects and policies. It can't go into council services such as propping up the bin collections or repairing the floozy and the jacuzzi. It has to be reinvested in transport related projects and policies. So some of the ideas that have been identified so far include installing controlled parking zones around the border of the Clean Air Zone to stop people parking their cars on the outside and walking in and causing problems for residents. Funding for a hydrogen bus pilot scheme, city centre pedestrianisation so that makes walking more attractive and safer to do so, and an enhanced programme of active and sustainable travel, so bringing forward more cycle lanes so that cycling is a safer and realistic option, an alternative to the private car. I'm now going to hand over to Gareth, who will talk you through some of the support that's available. And then if you have any questions, I should have said this at the beginning, apologies. If you have questions, please pop them in the chat box and we will answer them all at the end. Thank you.
Thanks, Gemma, and thanks again to everybody attending for making the time this evening to turn into the webinar and hear about the Clean Air Zone. So following on from what Gemma has said, and the reasoning behind the introduction of the Clean Air Zone and how it's set to work, we wanted to support as many people as possible as part of the transition into compliance and being able to amend their travel modality, how they get around or change their vehicle. And we're aware that this is something that isn't necessarily a simple thing to do. So part of that process comes in the form of exemptions, with us providing a period of time where if you are the owner, driver, user of a non-compliant vehicle, you won't receive charges. So there are a number of exemptions, but the two kind of most prevalent for us at the moment, the two that we receive the most applications for, are the resident and the worker exemptions, as we term them. So if you live within the Clean Air Zone and you have a non-compliant vehicle, you are eligible to apply for a 2-year exemption. So that's 2 years exempt from charges from the launch date of the Clean Air Zone in the 1st of June 2021. So via our website, and we can put the link in, and I've popped the link in just into the chat for the website. Any resident within the Clean Air Zone who owns a non-compliant vehicle is eligible to apply for a 2-year exemption. Additionally, for people employed within the Clean Air Zone, and through the research that we did and the discussions with employers within the Clean Air Zone, including Birmingham City Council and the Children's Hospital, we determined that the earning cap for workers that we believe would require the most support was £30,000 per year. So if you work within the Clean Air Zone, earn no more than £30,000 per year and meet some additional criteria, including working a minimum of 18 hours per week, you're entitled to a 1-year exemption, and there are also subsequent financial incentives that you will also be able to apply for, which I think we might come to after this. Additionally, commercial vehicles owned by businesses within the Clean Air Zone are also entitled to apply for a 1-year exemption, and as you can probably see at the bottom of the slide, there is an exemption for visitors to the medical centres, to select medical centres, including the Children's Hospital within the Clean Air Zone, and that will be by a voucher system, which we can talk about more if required. That's not quite live yet, but will be soon, and certainly in place for the launch of the Clean Air Zone. So yeah, Gemma, could I have the next slide, please? So further measures to support the introduction of the Clean Air Zone. There's not, I'm keen to not just read you the slides. So these are the vehicle types that will be completely exempt from charges in the clean air zone. So you can see that there's vehicles there with the disabled passenger tax class. Now that's known as tax class 85, which might be more familiar to any of you that may be aware of that tax class. Motorcycles are non-chargeable, and then there are further exemptions for show vehicles, historic vehicles, specialist vehicles, and community and school transport. So community and school transport vehicles are vehicles that come under tax class or section 19 and 22. On the website there's a full explanation as to how those vehicles are classified, but essentially they're not-for-profit vehicles, and they will have indefinite exemptions like the other vehicles listed on here. Next slide please, Gemma. Cheers. So in order to deliver or successfully deliver the clean air zone, and also in order to support the businesses, the individuals, the residents, the workers within the clean air zone, and the taxi industry, which is a key and important part of any city, including our own, we have these funding pots in place. So this is money that the Birmingham City Council has to pay out in order to support the transition into the clean air zone. So you can see the total there is 35 million, and it's divisible on the right hand side. So there's 15 million pounds for hackney carriage vehicles and private hire vehicle taxi types. This is for a range of financial support packages, including the purchase of a compliant vehicle, upgrading, changing the fuel type of the vehicle, and then we have the same thing for a scrappage scheme, effectively for our for workers that qualified for the 1 year exemption. They'll also qualify for a scrappage and mobility credit scheme. And without going into too much detail here, the scrappage scheme effectively is the exchange of their present non-compliant vehicle, and which would be scrapped in exchange for up to £2,000 towards the purchase of a compliant vehicle. Not a new vehicle, can be a pre-owned vehicle, but it will be a vehicle that is compliant for the purposes of the clean air zone. And finally, on there is the £10 million that is available for upgrade and replace for small and medium enterprises, so businesses located in the West Midlands with heavy goods vehicles and coaches. Thanks, Gemma. As Gemma touched upon earlier on, the clean air zone itself is part of a larger transport plan, which is one aspect, really, the clean air zone. Though as the clean air zone launches, and with, as Gemma said, with money generated from the charges, which all is then divisible by broader transportation plans by law, we're looking to influence the development of the city and a greener city in a much more expansive and positive way. And so the four big areas which you'll probably see attached to all of Birmingham City Council's transportation development plans going forward to tackle climate change and promote health and well-being are these four main areas. So the reallocation of road space, which is a way to make pedestrianisation, travelling by foot, by bike, and by tram here and there as far more enjoyable, easy and safe as possible. A general transformation of the city centre, a way of amending the city centre to a degree to make that type of different transport safer, more viable, and also to, as the clean air zone set out to do, to lower the level of harmful emissions, make the city centre and the wider city a safer and greener place. The prioritisation of active travel, which stems from that, includes the introduction of more blue route cycle lanes, and we've seen under what's known as the emergency transport plan the introduction of some cycle lanes on roads like Bradford Street that have come up quite soon, and this will be something that you'll see rolled out far more across the city with much broader introduction of similar schemes, with the idea that we want to improve the futures of citizens, workers within the city, and in order to do that, we're aware that to combat things like the harmful emissions and the effects that the critical illnesses that they lead towards, that we can take that and we can help people learn how to prioritise more active travel themselves. And finally, managing demand, which relates a lot to things like parking, to provide resident parking permits, and to ensure that via the introduction of something like the clean air zone, it doesn't lead to areas that are on the border of or surround the clean air zone being inundated with people trying to park non-compliant vehicles there. So there are schemes in place in order to make sure that that isn't the case. And also we are reactive in the broader sense. So if something becomes more of an issue, it gives us the opportunity to react and change that positively. Thanks, Gemma. So yeah, I mean, that I guess I've kind of led into this as talking about the clean air zone's place amongst the wider transportation plans for Birmingham. It is, as the title suggests, there, an enabler of change. We know that the city and broadly the country itself is working towards a target of becoming carbon neutral, which involves working towards zero emissions. So as the City Council, we do want to take a leading role, as is mentioned here, and we want to be a real leader in the market of change and improving the quality of life for everybody and the quality of air and just general health within our city. As Gemma said at the very beginning, we are in a climate emergency. It was declared nationally and internationally. We were aware that this is a worldwide issue, and we would love to become net carbon or net zero carbon by 2030, which is part of our route to zero. As the clean air zone comes into effect, and actually before that, it does lead into it influences areas outside of the clean air zone itself, such as significant expansion here of the city's electric vehicle charging points. That's actually going to play out with the introduction of around 200 new vehicle charging points, electric vehicle charging points in the city. Additionally, it leads towards the purchase of hydrogen buses to encourage and I suppose show the benefits of that technology. And finally on here is plans to purchase 50 electric Hackney carriages and make them available to Hackney carriage drivers as part of a rental scheme organised by the City Council. Thanks, Gemma. Cheers. And I think that's the final slide. If you have to excuse me if I thought there was one more, but we tend to sometimes do it the other way around with me doing the opening slide. So that is that they are the slides. So if you have any questions, as Gemma had said at the start, if you put them in the chat, we can get to them now. So
okay, so if sorry, there's an echo there. What I'll do is I'll run through some of the questions on screen, and hopefully we'll be able to provide you with the answers tonight. So just scroll through the first ones. Gareth has put a link to the vehicle checker and the Brumbury's website in the chat as well, where you can go and check your vehicle for compliance. So the first question we've got, is there support for voluntary or non-profit organisations that operate in the city centre? So the short answer to that would be no, unless there are paid for staff. So paid for staff are able to use their worker exemptions if they qualify for those, but volunteer staff are not eligible for them. At the time of the consultation, all areas were considered, including charities and faith groups and community groups, but it was ascertained that those in most need of support and those who are able to most demonstrate their time in the city centre were residents and workers. However, if those who are working for the voluntary or non-profit organisations do so in addition to a job in which they are eligible for a permit or as a resident, then they will be able to use that permit to travel without charge. I hope that makes sense. But the important thing to stress is to check, first of all, whether or not they're going to be subject to the charge, as it is only 1 in 4 vehicles.
Yeah, just to add to that as well, with regards to some of the inquiries that I've had recently of that nature too, the actual issue around or the exemption possibilities around some of the vehicles utilised by such organisations that fall within the community vehicle exemption is also worth looking into. And of course, as Gemma had said, it may well be that users of vehicles that are part of voluntary groups are already either compliant or exempt for a different purpose, for instance, due to employment or residentially. But certainly for groups, an important part to look at is whether or not the vehicles used come under section 19 or 22, which would make them exempt in any case. Thanks.
Thank you, Gareth. We don't seem to have any other questions at the moment, so what I'll do is we'll just go on mute for a moment. We're making the time as 7:26, so we'll give it to 7:28, see if any more questions come in. Otherwise, we can close the call. So I'll just give it a couple of minutes. I think we can probably ascertain there's no further questions. So on that note, on behalf of myself and Gareth, we'd just like to thank everybody for joining this evening. We hope you found that helpful. We will send a copy of the recording out to you. But the most important thing to do now is to go on the Brumberries website, check if you're going to be charged, and if so, check if you're eligible for any of those exemptions and apply for them now. They are open. The sooner you apply, the faster we can turn them around so that you're covered from the 1st of June onwards. Other than that, have a good evening and thank you again.